So recently Asus sent me this. It's the ROG Flow Z13 tablet, which is powered by AMD's newest APU, which up until now we've been calling Strix Halo. But AMD is now calling it the AMD Ryzen AI Max Plus 395. Ridiculous name. I'm sure a bunch of suits in a boardroom cooked it up, but that's completely beside the point. This thing is an incredibly powerful chip, with the CPU having 16 cores and 32 threads and the GPU having 40 graphics cores. I shared some footage of gameplay that I captured from this thing running on Windows. I will leave that video linked down below so that you can check it out and see how it performs for yourself. But please keep in mind that benchmarks are currently under embargo because this is a pre-production model and all of that stuff would change with new drivers and firmware, etc. So I'm come back later after the release unit comes out and they're going to send me one of those and I'll run the benchmarks then. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about running the games on this thing with Bazzite, essentially the same operating system that runs on the Steam Deck. Again, I can't show numbers because this is a pre-production unit, but I can show you gameplay and tell you what settings that I'm using. And you can make your own judgments based on that. Before we get to that, though, there are two things that I want to mention. First, a huge thanks to Antheus over at Bazzite for helping me with this. I would not have been able to adjust TDP settings on this device without their help. However, by the time Strix Halo devices are on the market and available for people to buy, Bazzite should be updated and ready so that you won't have to go through all of the steps that I went through. Secondly, I want to give Asus a huge shout out, as I've seen plenty of other hardware manufacturers tell content creators, no, you can't install Bazzite on this. Asus could have said that's not allowed, but they said that would be a really cool video, so a big thank you to them. Now, if you're watching this after you bought the device, then you may want to install Bazzite on it. Let's walk through that process and I'll show you some gameplay after that. If that sounds good, get comfortable, get subscribed, and let's get started. All right, so the first thing that you have to do is you're going to go to bazzite.gg. I've got a link in the description down below that like button. Then you're going to click on download Bazzite right up here, and it's automatically going to scroll you down to the correct section. And then over here, it's going to ask you what hardware are you using. In this case, they don't actually have something for the Flow Z13, but I talked to the people at Bazzite. They said just click on Asus ROG Ally and Ally X. And then it's going to ask you for your desktop environment. This is when you're not in gaming mode, what it's going to show. And you have two choices. You have KDE or GNOME, and this is totally up to you. I'm going to pick KDE only because I'm way more familiar with that, and I don't know much about GNOME, although I've heard really, really good things. Then you're going to click on Download Bazzite Deck. Next up, you have to flash Bazzite onto some kind of removable storage so that you can install it on the ROG Flow Z13. I use this one right here, which is not actually a thumb drive. It's just an SD card reader, but I have a lot of extra SD cards laying around, so that's what's useful for me. I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. Then you're going to want to flash Bazzite onto it. And I'm going to use Raspberry Pi Imager. A lot of people use Balena Etcher. It does the same thing. I'm going to click Choose Device, and I'm going to say No Filtering. Next, I'm going to grab the file that I just downloaded from bazzite.gg. It's going to be called bazzite-deck-stable.iso, and I'm going to drop it right there under Operating System. And then finally, it says Choose Storage. I'm just going to pick this one right here, Mass Storage Device Media. This is my USB stick. Make sure you pick the right thing, because if you pick the wrong thing, you're going to be a very, very sad individual because you will erase whatever's on there. I'm going to hit Next. It'll say, would you like to apply OS customization settings? I'm going to say no. And then it'll say all existing data on this will be erased. Are you sure you want to continue? You're going to pretend to be Russ from Retro Game Core, and you're going to say, yeah, man, I want to do it. And then it's going to ask you for your password if you're on a Mac, and I'm going to go ahead and type that in. And now all it's going to do is it's going to fill up this bar, and when it's done, you're ready to move on to the next step. And then after all that waiting, you think you're done, but then it has to verify. So you're going to wait a little bit more. And then when it's all done, it's going to tell you that the write was successful, and all you have to do is click on Continue. Now, before you actually install Bazzite, you're going to open up your device encryption settings, and it says right here, BitLocker Drive Encryption. I'm going to click on that. It's going to bring up this window right here. I don't need this anymore. And I'm going to say back up my recovery key, and I will save it to my Microsoft account. So now it's going to save to my Microsoft account. My key has been saved. I'm going to hit finished, and then I'm going to turn off BitLocker. And it is decrypting my hard drive. Now, after about an hour, for me, it finally finished BitLocker. Until it says BitLocker off, it's going to say that it's currently decrypting, and you don't want to mess with it until it's done with that. Now that we've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and turn the computer off and reboot it. And when it reboots, I'm going to jump into the BIOS using F2. So as the computer boots up, I'm going to spam F2. It's going to bring in my my BIOS. So now I'm on my BIOS, and as you can see, I've got my boot priority over here. The first thing that I want to do is click on switch all, and then I'm going to drag my Windows boot manager down to the bottom, and my UEFI mass storage device, that's this thing right here, up to the top. Undo switch all. Then I'm going to hit F7. F7 brings you into advanced mode, and I'm going to page over to security, and then I'm going to come down to secure boot. Once I click on secure boot, currently I have it enabled, and I'm going to disable it. And then I'm going to press F7 again to get back to this. And then I'm going to press F10. It's going to ask me if I want to save. I'm going to say, okay. Now it's going to reboot again. And this time I'm not going to touch the computer. It's going to boot straight from this drive. Once we've got this screen, all I need to do is go push up to go to install Bazzite. And I'm going to press enter. It's going to think about it for a little bit. And then you'll see some code pop up on the screen. Just don't touch anything and wait for a little bit. It's going to give you a big white screen in a second. And there's the big white screen. And now I can start the actual installation process. So first off, I'm going to hit continue. And I'm going to check my localization. I've got my keyboard set to English, my language support set to English, my time and date is set to the proper time zone. My installation destination, I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to make sure that all of this is exactly how I want it. And it looks like it's good. I'm going to make sure that there's a check here, and I've got storage configuration set to automatic. I'll hit done. It says my current Bazzite deck software selection requires this much of available space, including swap space. The disks I've selected have this much space. So I'm going to go ahead and hit reclaim space, and I am going to delete everything. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all of that stuff, and I'm going to hit reclaim space. Next, I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to add in my network. I'm going to select the network from down here. I'm going to hit my network. It's going to ask for my password. I'm going to hit connect, and then I'm going to click on done. And now under user creation, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is Bazzite is my full name. Username is Bazzite. Password, I'll put in a password, and I hit done. And now, if I did everything right, if I hit begin installation, we should be all set. By the way, Bazzite has a written guide on how to install right on their website, so make sure that you check that out, and I will leave that linked down below that like button. Once this progress bar fills up, down here on the bottom, it's going to say reboot system. Go ahead and click on that, and you'll see some text up here that's telling you what's going on. It says reloading, so I'm just going to wait. After the waiting's done, it comes up with this blue screen, and you've got 4 options. Because I turned off secure boot, I don't need to enroll or do any of those things. I'm just going to hit continue boot. And now you can see down here on the bottom, it says Bazzite. So it looks like we've made some progress. It says updating cargs. I don't know what a carg is, but cool. And once it boots up, you're going to be tempted to use the mouse. I think it's a little bit easier to use the keyboard and enter button. So I'm going to go ahead and select English and hit enter. And then it's going to ask me to choose my time zone. And then it's going to ask me to join a network. And it says installing. And after it spins for a little bit, it's going to come up with a timer that'll tell you how long it's going to take to install. So I'll see you when this is done. And then just like a Steam Deck, it's going to bring up a QR code for you to scan with your Steam app, or you can type in your username and password. And then once you've got that, you are ready to go. However, because I'm literally like the only person with this device that's installing Bazzite on it, I have to run a command and send a bug report to the people over at Bazzite so that they can update and give us access to all of the TDP stuff for this particular device. This is not something that you'll have to do, but I'm going to do that now, and I'll be back in a little bit. And now you can see I'm booted into game mode. If I hit my Xbox button on my controller, it brings up the left menu. If I press Xbox and B, it brings up my handheld daemon stuff. I can go ahead and hit B to close that. If I bring up Xbox and A, it brings up the performance tab on the right-hand side. And now I am downloading games so that I can start running those same tests that I did on the Windows side of things. If you haven't seen that video and you want to see how this thing performs on Windows, go check out the video. I will leave it linked down below. Otherwise, after these games are downloaded, I'm going to run a few tests and I'll show you the results. So first of all, I want to point out that the sound is not working on this device yet. This is the same thing that happened with the ROG Ally X when it was first released, so I fully anticipate that the sound will be working by the time people can get hands-on with this device. Secondly, I'm not sure if this is the best way to do it, but I'm blessed with an inability to really see frame drops or choppy footage unless it's real bad. So when I play a game and I get in the zone, I just don't tend to notice that stuff. Now, last video, even though the games were running at acceptable frame rates, and I know that they were because I could actually see the numbers, I saw a lot of people saying that it looked choppy. And I can assure you in person, it absolutely does not look choppy. I think that that had something to do with my capture card. So in this video, I decided that rather than use a capture card, I'm going to point my camera at these games and just increase my camera's frame rate to 60 frames per second, which is the highest that you can go to on YouTube, I think. Usually I shoot at 29.97 frames per second. Now, my camera can go higher, but I don't think YouTube supports 120 frames per second here, so that would have been a waste unless I slowed down the footage, which would feel like it would be, I don't know, like against the embargo with frame counting. Anyway, here you can see the games that I've captured using Bazzite on this and how they run. I've also shown you at the beginning of each clip the settings that I used for each game. Now that I'm done yapping, I'll just show gameplay and some music, and I'll be back with my conclusion later on. So on both Windows and Bazzite, performance was very similar between the two operating systems. But on Bazzite and by extension SteamOS, it will continue to improve over time, as Valve has said that they're going to continue doing shader caching for games not just on the Steam Deck, but on other hardware as well. But I have to be honest about my own biases here. Obviously, I prefer SteamOS and, of course, Bazzite to Windows, as I am a controller-first player. Those operating systems are made for controller-first players, just like Windows is made for mouse and keyboard people. But my gripe with Windows is that it doesn't offer a gamepad-only option, where SteamOS or Bazzite does offer desktop mode. Of course, on a device like this, SteamOS mouse and keyboard interface really isn't great. I mean, in gaming mode, I mean. For one, the mouse clicks seem to be unable to actually activate anything, which might be something that'll be fixed later. It's why I was using the keyboard when I was installing Bazzite. But that's because Bazzite, like SteamOS, is made for controllers first. And of course, all that goes away as soon as you jump into desktop mode, where everything works just like it would on any other computer. Though I did run into an issue where desktop mode thought I was click dragging, and I was not click dragging, and I couldn't get it to like let go of the click drag. It was a little frustrating, but I was able to figure it out. Other issues I ran into was that some games tend to crash from time to time, especially when you are exiting the game, like you're quitting the game, and then sometimes it just sits there and you can't do anything, and you just have to kill the process by using the Steam menu, which is not a big deal, but it's also not a graceful exit to the game, and that could lead to issues down the road with like save files and that kind of stuff. Also, as I said earlier in the video, there's no sound currently supported, so I would say that Bazzite on this particular hardware is unplayable, but I'm sure that that's going to be fixed sooner rather than later, especially now that they have bug reports over at Bazzite from me using this hardware. But on brand new hardware with no help from AMD, Bazzite worked really well. And I think that we can assume SteamOS would run just fine on this as well. But what do you think about Strix Halo on Bazzite? How did the performance look to you? Let me know in the comment section down below that like button. And while you're down there, click subscribe, because as soon as I get my hands on a retail unit for this, I will be doing benchmarks so that we can see how Strix Halo stacks up against the competition. So I hope to see you on that one. Until then, thanks for watching and stay rad.